and welcome to yet another edition of the Full Force News Burst, brought to you by GeneralsJoesReborn.com, with me as your host, Chris Hardmaster Bator McLeod, aka Diagnosticated. Joining me today to talk about the news that Iko Uwais is in talks to play the Hardmaster in the upcoming G.I. Joe Snake Eyes movie is Justin Hardermaster Bator Bell. So without further ado,
well, at least it's not soft. It could have been soft.
Well,
it could have been blind.
I was kind of
faceless. It could have been any
I'm
of those.
saving all of those for the rest of the cast when they get announced. I actually, funny enough, I started with Soft Master, Softy. I think I put Softy Master. So anyway, you're going to get to enjoy that when we get the Soft Master cast. Anyway,
I'll forget I heard it.
Anyway, so without further ado, let's get stuck into this masturbatory news burst. Earlier today, The Hollywood Reporter broke the news that Iko Uwais has been in talks to play the Hardmaster in the upcoming G.I. Joe Snake Eyes movie. The Indonesian actor, stuntman, fight choreographer and martial artist, famous for The Raid and Wu Assassins, to name but a few, follows Henry Golding and Andrew Koji as the latest members of the Snake Eyes cast, and with the Baroness casting just around the corner, we are really starting to see this movie take shape. Iko boasts a pretty impressive catalogue of work in the martial arts action genre, with some unforgettable turns in films like The Raid, its sequel, and his latest Netflix series Wu Assassins, and that really small cameo in Force Awakens, which I really enjoy. He is in talks for the role of the Hardmaster, who in the comics was a much older character, so it's very likely that we won't be seeing too much familiarity with the source material on this one. With that said, Justin, are you excited to see Iko in talks for the movie?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when we were talking first about, I think it was the stunt coordinator from Wu Assassins being involved in the film, we kind of hypothesized that if anybody from Wu Assassins was going to be in the movie, it would be Iko. Yeah. And I think both of us kind of figured that maybe, a Storm Shadow type role, and apparently it's not. But yeah, I mean, whatever role he's going to be playing, I'm happy to see it. And as kind of a Snake Eyes prequel movie, I could see the Hardmaster having kind of a younger, kind of more integrated role as far as, the ongoing story goes.
Yeah, so you don't expect them to age him up or anything like that?
No, I doubt it. I doubt that. Yeah, I think he'll probably stay pretty close to what he is. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, depending on the age between Iko and Andrew Koji, I don't think he's really necessarily uncle age difference or anything like that, so he may just be an instructor or something, not necessarily all related, or maybe he's a brother or anything like that. It's kind of opens things right up.
I mean, it could be that when we see him originally he's young and then they age him up for the role later in the film. Possibly it could be like a flashback scenario.
Oh, that's true too.
There's a possibility of that, I think, but again, we're not going to know until we start seeing actual footage and the cast and what they're going to be wearing and all that kind of stuff. I'm super excited to see what the costume department come up with for this kind of stuff. I know it's kind of like you probably just expect your usual martial arts, that kind of fare, but I could see them kind of having to sort of develop some kind of future but not future type get up. I don't know. Obviously, it's going to be. I think they've discussed that it's going to be kind of more current of our time. It's not going to be necessarily the 15 minutes into the future like G.I. Joe has been kind of set in the past. I'm sorry, we're getting into the Back to the Future realms with the confusion of where I'm in the timeline. But yeah, he wasn't in our fantasy casting episode, but we have talked about him obviously being a possible addition since, as you mentioned. I mean, does it bother you that he might be playing an historically older character, or do you feel like we have to leave our preconceptions about the original source material at the door here?
Yeah, we definitely have to leave our preconceptions at the door. I mean, especially when you're talking about somebody like Hardmaster, who really isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of those unique characters that obviously plays a very central role in the Snake Eyes mythology. Obviously, Snake Eyes wouldn't be what he is now without, the Hardmaster's death, and that was such a critical element of his conflict with Storm Shadow. But it's at the same time, I don't think it's critical that the Hardmaster is that aged character. I mean, the story that they told with the Hardmaster could happen just as easily with a younger character as it did with an older character.
Yeah.
So yeah, I certainly I'm not bent out of shape about him being younger, and And honestly, I can certainly leave my preconceptions at the door and open up my mind to, it just being kind of a different take on the Snake Eyes story. It kind of has to be.
I mean, it's not necessary that he's going to have a similar role. I mean, it might just be that,
exactly.
By name is the only real connection that we see. I mean, whatever the story is going, whatever the script looks like, whatever the story that they have for this overall cast, it might really not necessarily be that pivotal around the Hardmaster, possibly. But I suppose that's something we'll see in the future. But I mean, do you feel he's destined to the same fate as the original Hardmaster?
I think that's possible and probably likely. I mean,
I think Zartan's going to shoot him with a bow and arrow.
I was just going to kind of say that. I mean, if they continue casting and we hear that Zartan has been cast, I think that kind of seals the deal, and that would be great. But I'm
still fingers crossed. For Diego Luna for Zartan. I think that would be amazing.
That'd be awesome. But yeah, I mean, I think like we were just saying, the death of the Hardmaster is a pretty critical component of the Snake Eyes Storm Shadow rivalry.
Yeah.
So I really think that they probably will go down that path. I mean, obviously, how it happens and who makes it happen and all that stuff is probably up for debate. But I would be surprised if they don't. And I'm not saying, I'll be disappointed if they don't. I mean, maybe they have a fresh take that is different and unique. And it just seems that's definitely an undercurrent in pretty much any mythology, any version of the G.I. Joe mythology where they do have the Hardmaster involved, whether it's Resolute or a Real American Hero or even Renegades, he showed up.
Yeah.
The death of the character drives kind of the future story. So it does seem like kind of an important aspect, but it's not the equivalent of like any of the more popular infamous villains, and you don't have to handle it the same way. You can definitely tell a different story.
Yeah. I am desperate now for this film to be hugely successful because I really want to see a follow-up or like a continuation of the story where Storm Shadow joins the Joes and we get some sort of digital camo version of Storm Shadow again, because I wasn't really that impressed with the Rise of Cobra toy that came out that kind of hinted at that Storm Shadow.
Oh yeah, I mean that was not. They made some great toys for those movies, totally. But that was not one of them.
I mean, Storm Shadow was kind of, I don't know, it was a bit hit and miss with his particular toy in the Rise of Cobra. I did like that the one that was based on the early kind of Paris Pursuit I thought was quite cool. But yeah, as they got like, Arctic and all that kind of jazz, they weren't really vibing with me. In any case, slight kind of tangent there. We're getting well ahead of ourselves here, aren't we? We're already talking about the next movie.
No kidding. It's like, Snake Eyes is not out yet, but man, I can't wait until Snake Eyes 3 comes out. No, it'll be Storm Shadow as a Joe. And
it would be called, the spin-off will be called Storm Shadow, and it'll be about him joining the Joes. Man, I'm on the writing team. We're in Hasbro as we speak, and Paramount. Anyway,
if that happens, that would be fantastic. That would mean the movie was wildly successful, and
totally.
And I would be, and I'll go on record now, and you'll probably hate me for this, but I am one of those people that actually didn't like the fact that Storm Shadow joined the Joe team. I think Larry Hama kind of he said in the past, he's purposefully tried to make villains with a lot of character and make them, kind of see the evil of their ways. But, I got to tell you, as a kid, my favorite villains were, Storm Shadow, Destro, Zartan, and then at some point in the comics, Larry Hama turned them all good, and it's like, what are you doing? It's the best villains in 80s history, and they're all becoming good guys.
Yeah, I know what you're saying with that, and I must admit, with again coming from an Action Force background, having Storm Shadow as a bad guy most of the all of the time, and it was interesting that Quick Kick was such a big character in the Action Force comics as well. Like and I liked the fact that the martial arts were huge in the Action Force comics. It was amazing. But yeah, I agree to an extent. I must admit though, when I picked that figure up off because I'd been reading the comic at the time, when I picked that version 2 figure off the peg in a US store and turned it around and it had G.I. Joe, and I was like, where's the Cobra logo on this thing? I don't get it. And then read the file card and it was like, what? Like I was so confused, but at the same time, like that figure was I think that is up there with one of my all-time favorite action figures. I think that second version of Stormy.
Oh man, I have a pretty cool story when it comes to, and this is probably, we're talking about the movie, and I'm going to talk about my life was like in 1988. But I was either just starting high school, but I was an older kid, and
still
you were 46.
Toys. We know what was going on.
This happened last week. Yeah. But no, I lived in a very small town in Vermont, teeny tiny town. And, didn't have any real local stores. We had a couple local department stores. Didn't even have a Walmart or anything like that. Wow. So I was buying my toys at Ames and Richards and all these little weird department stores.
Yeah.
So I was at the local general store. It's a place called Dan and Witt's. It was literally owned by a guy named Dan and a guy named Witt. And that was the store. And I was in there, I go in there almost every day because that's where we bought groceries and stuff. That was our place. And they have a little toy section, as all those kind of general stores, hardware stores have.
Yeah.
And I went in, and they had like 3 or 4 figures from 1988, the first time I had ever seen them in my life.
Wow.
Had Storm Shadow and Shockwave, and I think 1 or 2 others.
Oh, bang it! Really good ones as well.
Yeah, and I was the same way. I looked at Storm Shadow, and I was a comic reader, so I did kind of know, where he was leaning, and I saw that his sleeve was rolled up and the Arashikage tattoo on there, and I was like,
a good touch. That was a good touch, wasn't it? And, wow.
So yeah, pretty much I had to put him back on the peg because I actually didn't bring any money because I didn't expect to find anything there, and I had to run home and I combed through the couch to find every bit of spare change I could find, and ran back to the store and cobbled together. And they were $8.99 at this general store. It was back in the 80s. That was nuts.
It was. That was quite expensive, wasn't it, back in then?
Yeah, they were usually like $2 or $3. Well, they were $2 or $3 in normal stores, but at this general store, it was a lot more expensive. So I cobbled together the money, and I dropped it, and I got my '88 Storm Shadow at the local Dan and Witt's general store, and
scalpers.
Yeah, no kidding. Dan and Witt, those sons of
sons of wits is sons of Dan and anyway. Yeah, that's awesome, man. I love the stories that everyone has about, particular characters and figures they find and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, dude, that was just, it was a magical time, wasn't it?
Totally.
Just seeing walls and walls of that stuff. I mean, even when Rise of Cobra was at its fullest, let's bring it back to the movie talk. And I was working at Toys R Us at the time, and just to see G.I. Joe product, taking up an entire aisle was amazing for me. And even a couple of end caps at the front of the store, and I'm like, what is going on? We're getting G.I. Joe figures in stores again. It's nuts. And that was the last time we saw them in the UK, I think. Jeez.
Yeah, I worked for a visitors association at the time, and I had to visit a store not a store, but a site down in Brattleboro, southern Vermont. And I made sure I got up early and drove down into Massachusetts simply so I could visit a Walmart and a Toys R Us, and I think there was a Target down there too before I went to my first spot of the day. And I still remember walking into the Walmart down in town in northern Mass, and it was right around launch time for the toys, and being like, oh, cool, maybe we'll have a few pegs. And I walked in, and they had 16 feet of green and black Rise of Cobra cards, and I was like, oh my God, what is happening here?
I know. And then you look like a complete because you're walking out with most of it
and
as
then,
well.
And you just pull a shopping cart out and start kind of dumping all the pegs right into the shopping cart. And
I've got to get these on General's Joe's. Really
quick. Exactly. I probably have a couple reviews on General's Joe's from that shopping trip.
Oh, that's amazing. Anyway, coming back to the movie that we're supposed to be talking about.
What movie?
Retaliation or something? I don't know. With the casting coming thick and fast now, I'm going to put it out there. Who do you think we're going to see as the Baroness? Because obviously that is literally around the corner, that news, isn't it?
It is. It's got to be coming soon. And
big shout out to Silver Optimus, by the way, on Twitter for hooking us up with some amazing info all the time.
Yeah. And, man, and I keep on saying I'm so out of touch about, who is famous and popular and all that stuff these days. But I think you mentioned, the possibility of maybe Blake Lively to me, and I think that sounds like a potentially cool possibility. That she could definitely work. It's because beyond that,
it's because the information that kind of trickled through, it came through as because she's the same age as the other 2 cast members, and I checked the age. I was like, okay, so I typed in actresses and that number just to see what would come up, and I'm like, okay, there's quite a few pretty decent options in that sense of apparently quite a big name as well has been mentioned. So I'm like, wow, this could be really interesting. And I think Blake Lively is one of those actresses. I look at her and I think, okay, black hair and glasses. I think we've got an option here. Do you know what I mean? I think there's a real shout here for her. But anyway, well, that's going to be way off, isn't it? We're going to be way off with that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it'll be somebody I've tangentially heard of. Then I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of know who this person is, and then I'll look them up, and they'll have like 4 million followers on Instagram and be the most popular actress of all time. And I have no idea who
How
they
did
are.
I miss her?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we're going to find out soon, so hopefully we can. We'll be doing a burst on that. I'm got a feeling. I've got to go. Okay, check this out. I've got to go away this weekend to take Kate and one of her friends to the Backstreet Boys concert.
Holy
I would have gone as well, but we couldn't get the ticket. So it's a friend of hers got 2 tickets. A friend backed out or something along those lines. So Kate's jumped on board for that one. I'm jealous because I love the Backstreet Boys, as you can probably tell from the way I act.
That does not surprise me to hear that about you, Chris.
But anyway, I've got a horrible feeling that this news is going to drop like tomorrow when I'm driving.
You're going to get in the car and like 10 minutes down the road, it's like, Baroness casting news. And you're going to be like, oh.
Son of a bit. It's going to be, honestly, I'm going to be like, Justin, I need to call you from this Airbnb. And I'm taking all my equipment.
From the Backstreet Boys concert and like
from outside of the car
Kate to take get Kate to take a selfie or something with the Backstreet Boys singing in the background so we can talk about the Baroness.
That'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
See if we can get I can't even I was going to make some joke about getting one of the singers of the Backstreet Boys to like give his perspective on the new Baroness actress, but I couldn't even tell you what any of their names are. So. Nick, okay, Nick, get Nick to talk to us about the Baroness.
I feel really bad that I can't think of any of the other names of the Backstreet Boys right now. Anyway, it's not important. What is important is that Iko Uwais is in talks. I say in talks. I'm going to have to underline
to join the Backstreet Boys.
To join the Backstreet Boys. The Snake or the spin-off movie to the Backstreet Boys. Snake Eyes as the Hard Master. So, just to kind of underline, that's what we're here to talk about. We've gone on a massive tangent. This is like a 20-minute podcast now because we've gone on
I don't even
ridiculous
remember what
tangent.
we're talking about.
I might even have to take some of it out and put on like an outtake or something, but we'll see. Anyway, Justin, thanks for jumping on to chat Iko Uwais.
Absolutely.
We didn't even really talk about The Raid, which is one of the best movies ever made.
That movie is fantastic.
And then I feel like Judge Dredd came out and basically copied the entire premise of it.
I think it kind of seemed like it, yeah. I mean, the movie did at least. It was very, very similar.
Yeah. In any case, brilliant film if you haven't seen it. I have seen the Raid 2. It's all right. It's not as good, but check out The Raid. It's brilliant. And of course, he's in Wu Assassins currently. And I think this particular element of casting, I think, will be very, very strong, especially... is in terms of martial arts, the guy is incredible.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely seems to be gearing that way.
Brilliant. Anyway, Justin, thank you so much for jumping on, mate. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That's it for this instalment of the Full Force News Burst, or News Ramble, as it's called now. Thank you to my awesome co-host, Justin Bell. See you next time, and as always, Full Force. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @TheFullForce, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/TheFullForce, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback or questions. We have also started a Patreon page, so if you want to see your name up in lights on these videos or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/TheFullForce podcast or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force.